Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books. And I'm gonna do a book tag today, but I wanted to do a little update first because I haven't made a video in a few days, I think like a week or something. So anyway, I wanted to do a little update and tell you guys what I just finished reading, what I'm reading now, and a little exciting news that I have. So, first of all, I want to say that I just finished reading a couple days ago, Mindhunter by John Douglas. It is the February book for the True Crime Book Club, and I'm very, very excited that it was the book that we chose to read because it was fantastic. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I loved the book. I will be doing a full review over here after the live stream, which I believe is the first Sunday in March at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's on YouNow, which is linked below. I talked a lot about it on my vlog. I talk so much on my vlog about books that it has been recommended. Hello, Boo Radley. Hello, Tucker. It has been recommended to me that I start doing my book talks, my book talk discussions, my book vlogs over here. So I'm going to start doing that over here and just driving around and talking about books that I'm reading because I have so many thoughts like while I'm reading books that I talk about it on my vlogs, but I'm gonna try to keep it over here and do less of that on my vlog. But I just love driving around and talking about books. I just love talking about books. That's why I started a BookTube channel. So that's the first thing. Then I just started reading, hold on a second, we're listening to on Audible, the third installment of the Truly Devious series, which is called The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson. I am about 20 minutes into it, listening to it on Audible. I'm loving it. And then I'm also reading a Richard Lehman book. I can't remember what it's called. Well, I guess I could pull up my Kindle and tell you. It's really not that great. It is called Funland. So I'm currently reading that as well. And I'm reading a motivational book for my Peterisms channel too, called Make Your Bed. I finished the other book, which was called Proof of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander, and it was about a near-death experience. And so if you don't know, I have a Peterism channel where I read meditation books over there every day and just tell stories of my life. Hello, Boo Radley. He's like poking his head up here. And just I read meditations over there and I just kind of tell stories of my life and things like that. I'm doing a book read-along on that channel of all inspirational, motivational books for the year of 2020, so that at the end of the year, I will have read 12 inspirational, motivational, some people choose to call them self-help books. I don't love that title. But so far, I've read The Four Agreements, The Secret, The Celestine Prophecy, and Proof of Heaven, and then the other book for February is called Make Your Bed. And I'm just gonna pick one book every month, but I've been doing like extra credit books too because there's been other books that I wanted to read. Now, for the exciting news, my husband was so fantastic that for Valentine's Day, he gifted me a trip to Phoenix, Arizona to visit Mel, my book club partner. We're so excited about it. Mel and I are like talking every day, planning it. I'm really, really excited about it. So I have that coming up in just a few weeks, and we are going to be planning new and exciting things for the book club. I haven't mentioned this to her, but I had kind of mentioned it on a vlog one night, the idea of doing like a true crime readathon sometime this year. So she and I may talk about that, and it's been in talks for quite some time. We weren't going to actually put it into action until we met. We weren't actually going to put it in action. A little bit of alliteration there. Until we met in person, but we have been talking about doing a true crime podcast for quite some time. So that will probably be coming in the near future. Always projects in the future. So anyway, okay, so the boys started wrestling a little bit and I had to stop the video and calm them down. So they are now sleeping, one on each side. Well, Boo's behind me and Tucker's to my right. Okay, let's get into this book tag, which is by Ariel Bissett, and it is called The Book Sacrifice Tag. And it was published on April 10th, 2013, so it's been around for a while. And it says, everyone has at least one book that they hate. Let's talk about them. Thanks to Jesse the Reader for thinking up the raining scenario, and to the Day After Tomorrow movie for thinking up the global warming, stuck in a library, burn books to live scenario. Rules. It's simple. Choose a book that you are willing to sacrifice in each scenario. Please hold. 1. An overhyped book. Let's start this off with a zombie apocalypse. Oh my God, I love everything to do with zombie apocalypses, okay? Every movie, every TV show, everything about it. Yeah, I have not seen Zombieland or Double Tap. I wanted to see both of those and I haven't seen them, so I need to get on that and watch those. But my favorite zombie series of life is As the World Ends by, maybe As the World Dies or As the World Ends. I think it's As the World Dies by Rhiannon Frater. And there's 3 books in the series. Each book is fantastic in its own right, and they are so good. And she is such a fantastic writer. I love her. She's written so many books. And I believe she also runs a podcast that talks about iZombie, the TV show. So if you're wanting a new, oh, I almost lost my phone. If you're wanting a new zombie apocalypse book and you haven't read Rhiannon Frater, check her out. It's Frater. She's fantastic. Okay, an overhyped book. An overhyped book. Let's start this off with a zombie apocalypse. Let's say that you're in a bookstore just browsing when bam, 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 zombie attack. An announcement comes over the PA system saying that the military has discovered that the zombies' only weakness is overhyped books. What book that everyone else says is amazing, but you really hated, do you start checking in the zombies knowing that it will count as an overhyped book and successfully wipe them out quickly? The woman in cabin, whatever, C or A or whatever cabin she was in, it doesn't really matter. Because I didn't like the book and it was so boring. Oh my God, I hated that book so much by Ruth Ware. And I used to talk about it all the time over here. And people would come and they would get real defensive and they were like, I loved that book. I didn't. And I think that reading is, you know, personal. And I think what we read and what we like is personal. So just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that somebody else can't. But just a few criticisms. I thought the book was boring. I thought it was trite. I thought that it was a repeat of the 50 other things I had seen done before. I thought there really was no mystery because I solved it literally in like the first 2 chapters. I thought the characters were poorly developed. I thought that things that happened in the book were unrealistic. I think that when you're writing a mystery that you want people to be able to have any clue as how to solve whatsoever, that your narrator or main character need to be trustworthy. You know, I'm all about, you know, untrustworthy characters or narrators in books. I think it makes books exciting and interesting, except for when you're reading from a mystery. Unless the mystery isn't about that. You know what I mean? Like, let me give you an example. The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn, which is one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and it's one of my favorite mysteries on top of that, which is coming out with a movie. The narrator is untrustworthy, okay? And this is kind of a literary critique that when you critique books, you talk about an untrustworthy narrator. And what that means is you can't necessarily trust what they're saying or telling you, right? But with her, it was because of her drinking, and so it made sense, and it was part of the book, right? And with the woman in the cabin C or whatever, I know that there were like mental health issues that were going on in there, but you didn't know that until the very, very end. And so it didn't like really make a lot of sense. I just think the book was poorly developed. I just did not love it. I thought, I don't know. I think it could have been done in a way that it was fantastic. I believe it got really, really hyped by whoever her marketer is, I don't know who she has for PR, but Ruth Ware should be paying that person 50% of all proceeds because it's literally on bestseller books in every Barnes & Noble that I ever go to, and now it's flooded into smaller bookstores, you know, like half-price books and things like that, where I see it literally everywhere. I'm like, the best, you should read this, you should read. I'm like, I read it, I don't want to read it again, trust me, okay? And the other thing that's interesting to me about this is that when people would comment in my videos where I talked about it, they would either say, I also disliked the book, or I loved the book so much I want to read it again, you know? I don't know why you would want to read a mystery book where you already know what happened. But hey, if that's your prerogative, like, you know, listen, Bobby Brown had his prerogative, you can too. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm referencing the song, if you don't remember the song, My Prerogative. And go check it out, it's fantastic. So anyway, I remember the little dance he did. So, okay, you know, it just is what it is. But I'd also purchased, at the time, because I heard so many great things about the book, right? This is where it makes me sad that there are a lot of like indie authors out there and authors that never get any attention, never get any hype whatsoever, and because they just don't have like great PR or marketing people. And then there are books that get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and they're just such crap, right? But anyway, I also bought In a Dark, Dark Wood, which is by Ruth Ware, it's called something like that. And people told me, they were like, if you didn't like The Woman in Cabin C or whatever, you're really going to dislike that one. So, I don't know, that's just been a book that has stuck with me over time, that I felt like I purchased because it was supposedly like the greatest mystery ever. And I just like, I got done with it and I was like, why are people so excited about this book? I don't understand. The other one was a book that I can't remember. It came out last year and it started with a V. It's so non-memorable to me that I just am like, I don't even, you know. I have to tell you, like, The Woman in Cabin C is interesting because, like, I read a lot of mysteries and thrillers, right? And last year for Christmas, I read, I can't remember the woman's name, but I read, well, that Pamela, her name is similar, but that one woman that I have read, like, all of her books that she put, all of her mysteries are fantastic. I've talked a lot about them. But anyway, but I can't remember the title now. I read, you know, all these books that I can't remember the titles. But the mystery at Mistletoe Manor, like, that was such a cute, fantastic mystery that delivered exactly how it should have. Like, to me, that's a book that stands out, and it was, like, a lot shorter and 10 times more developed than The Woman in Cabin C. So, anyway, that's the book that I would check at the Zombies. 2, a sequel. Let's say you've just left the salon with a smashing new haircut and boom, torrential downpour. What sequel are you willing to use as an umbrella to protect yourself? Well, 2, actually. I'm not a big series reader, but I either really, really get into the series or I really can't stand it at all. Like Rhiannon Frater, like I was talking about, As the World Dies, like the sequel, all 3 books in the trilogy are fantastic. And, you know, I think, like, what's another series that well, I'm reading The Truly Devious. I'm reading the 3rd book right now. And I think all 3 books are, the 2nd book was great, and the 3rd book is already interesting. So, you know, it's hard for me with series because I either love them or I hate them. And often when I read series, like, I don't want to go on because I don't want it ruined for me. The first one I would say is, why can't I think of this? But the one... You guys, I am like losing my mind that I can't think of these books today. Well, let me say the first one was the Sylvain book, Sleeping Giants. I loved Sleeping Giants. I thought it was one of the most fantastic books I've ever read in my entire life. I thought it was genius. It's about aliens, which I love to read about. The sequel, which I can't remember what it's called, Thesis Code or something like that, was boring. It was so boring. And I have the trilogy, I have the finale and the 3rd book in the trilogy, and I haven't read it yet because I just am like, I don't know that I really want to go into it. The other book, The Fifth Wave. The Fifth Wave, I loved that book. I thought, was that what it's called, The Fifth Wave? I thought it was so good. The movie was horrible. He hated it. He hated it. My husband hated it. But the book was so good. I was so into the book. I loved it, right? But the other 2 books in the series, I feel like he got a 3-book deal and he had to whip through it. And I've said this in other videos that I've done, because the other 2 books in the series were just, I mean, they were so blah. They were so boring. Now, let me tell you, another series that I loved was The Pines by Blake Crouch. Blake Crouch, in the last 2 years, has like really come into his own. Well, first of all, The Pines, his series, it was 3 books called The Pines, was made into a TV show with Matt Dillon, but he also wrote Dark Matter a couple years ago, which was fantastic. I loved it. 5 stars, one of my favorite books of life. And this year he wrote Recursion, or in 2019 he wrote Recursion, which was equally fantastic. If you're going to read them, read Dark Matter and then read Recursion because they get better. And if you read them. So Mel, my book club partner, she read Recursion and then Dark Matter. And it's like, you can tell he's like, his craft is getting better and better as it goes. And The Pines, which was a series that he wrote years ago, was one of my favorite series ever that I read last year. And they were short books and they were fantastically done. So I don't know. I think sometimes maybe they don't need to be series. I think sometimes books just need to be standalones and we don't need to go on and find out what happens next, you know? I think as readers we demand that, but I think sometimes it's better if you just leave it as it is. With Sleeping Giants, it kind of at the end of it, like, let me give you a good example. Like, I loved the book, A Truly Remarkable Thing or whatever by Hank Green. I'm really, really excited to read the sequel. But because the book was so unique and so different, if the sequel doesn't live up to it, it's going to make me think less about both books. And I think that's sometimes the problem that happens with sequels, is that if they're not, if both books, if the 2nd book or the 3rd book isn't fantastic, then, was it the 3rd wave, the 5th wave? I can't remember. Anyway, then it makes you not care about the other ones, you know? Like, The Hunger Games. All 3 books were fantastic. All 3 books were just absolutely fantastic, you know? So yes, it can be done. And those are just my opinions about those books, obviously, you know? Okay. Number 3, a classic. Let's say you're in a lecture and your English teacher is going on and on about the classic that changed the world, how it revolutionized literature, and you get so sick of that, you chuck the classic right at its face because you know what? This classic is stupid and it's worth attention just to show everyone how you feel. What classic did you chuck? Well, a couple. So I was an English major in college. My undergraduate degree is in English. Well, I have 2 books, I think. Number 1, I didn't read for a class, but it was The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And I heard so much about this book. Actually, when you look on book lists of like books that change people's lives, I think it's changed now. I think the first book is the Bible. I think the second book is Other Places You Go by Dr. Seuss. And I think the third book is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, which I've also tried to read. I don't know. I've heard so many people pronounce it different ways. Is it Ayn? Is it Ann? I don't know. But The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged are each equal. I mean, I think The Fountainhead is like 800 pages, and Atlas Shrugged is like 1,200 pages, 1,100 pages. And the pages are like this long, and it's like the smallest print you've ever seen in your entire life. I read The Fountainhead, okay? It took me months. It just took me months and months and months and months and months and months. And I just couldn't do it. I just could not. I remember finishing it, and I just didn't feel like there was any kind of response to it. Like, I didn't feel what anybody else felt, other than I can say that I read The Fountainhead. And I remember thinking at the time, is that the only reason that you're reading this, is to say that you've read The Fountainhead? I mean, I guess. Nobody ever asks. This is like the first time I've talked about it in a video in a long time. And you know, I can remember, like, it took me so long that I did something that I actually did with the book. I think it was called, oh shoot, it's not Love in the Time of Cholera, but oh, you know, it was the other book by Marquez. I can't remember what the book is called. But anyway, I literally went through and I was trying to read it over like a 3-month period. And I had it like figured out like how many pages I had to read per like whatever to read it. So, you know what? Like, in retrospect, I'm like thinking back, I don't even know. Maybe I didn't finish The Fountainhead. I don't know. I read that book like before I even got sober, which leads me to my second book. So maybe I didn't finish reading The Fountainhead. I can see it, and I have it in my basement, which is so funny that I kept it all these years and it had such little meaning to me. I don't know. I'll have to go down there and look, and actually, maybe I'll do a recap and let you guys know. But the second book, okay, and this book has kind of like some meaning to me, and I'm going to explain it to you in a second. I'm like looking at see how long this video is. But the book has some meaning to me, and the book is Middlemarch by George Eliot. And I took a Victorian literature class, and I had to do like a 20-page paper or something on Middlemarch by George Eliot, or it was a long paper. I don't know, 10 pages, something like that. And so this is at the height of my addiction. If you don't know, I've been sober for 25 years, over 25 years. And I was drinking every day. It was just like I was in the depths of, it was horrible. And so anyway, I went home, and like this weekend, one night, like, I mean, I read the entire book. Like, I don't even know how I did it. In retrospect, I have no idea how I did it, but I was drinking the whole time. And I wrote this paper, and I typed this paper up, I got the paper done, show up to class the next morning, and my professor is standing in the doorway, okay? Now, I've read this stupid Middlemarch by George Eliot, and I've written this paper that's like 50% of my class, right? And she's standing in front of the door, and so I'm like trying to go in, and she said, how did she say it? She said, she said, I'm going to ask you to drop the class or something like that, or you can't come in today or whatever. And I said, what? And she said, I'm going to ask you to drop the class. And I said, what are you talking about? And she was like, I've had a lot of complaints from other students. She's like, Peter, you don't ever show up to class, and when you do, she was like, students can smell alcohol on you. They're complaining about it. I was so pissed, okay? I mean, I was so pissed, because at this point, I was only going to like 2 classes anyway. I went down and I dropped the class. I was like, F her, you know, all this kind of stuff. Flash forward, I'm working in a treatment program, right? And I'm leaving one night to go to my office. And I used to drive through Starbucks, but I was driving my ex's car, and his window wouldn't go down. So I had to actually go into the Starbucks. This is probably 10 years later, and because that was the year that I got sober that all that happened. And I walked in there, and she was in front of me at the desk. I didn't know it was her until she was like asking for a pencil. She said to this guy, she was like, can I have a pencil? I've told this story so many times in like recovery things that it's funny, but and he was like, a pencil? And she's like, yeah, a pencil, because I'm doing the crossword or whatever. And he was kind of difficult with her. And I was like, dude, just give her a pencil, you know? And so he gave her a pencil, and she kind of like turned, and she like looked at me, and she like smiled, and she like walked away. And I was like, oh my God, that's Dr. So-and-so, right? She didn't look a day different. She looked exactly the same. And I'm gonna tear up telling this story, just so you know. So anyway, I was walking out and she stood up and she was like walking back in, or I think she had to ask for a pencil twice or something, but I was walking out and she stood there and she stood right in front of me and I said, Dr. So-and-so, and she said, Peter, and I said, God, I can't believe that you remember me. And she said, oh, well, I'll never forget you. She was like, that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire career. And so we talked for a second and I said, hey, I just want to let you know that I've been sober for 10 years. And I now work with, other alcoholics and addicts. And I just want you to know that what you did that day, what you said, like I owe you an amends for that. I owe you an amends for being disrespectful in your room and coming to class drunk. And she gave me a huge hug and she said, as teachers, we don't often get to find out what happened to our students. She said, but I'm so glad that you stopped and talked to me today. And it means so much to me to know that you're doing so well. And she gave me another hug and she said, have a great life. And, I'll probably never see her again. I probably will never see her in my life again. But, the fact that that woman had enough courage to stop me and care enough to say, oh no, she said that day in the doorway. She said, you have a real problem and I'm really worried about you. She said that day in the doorway because I thanked her for that. And I thanked her for that 10 years later. Not at the time of the door, I was like, F her. But she said at the door, she said, you have a real problem and I'm really worried about you. And so that is my least favorite book of life, is Middlemarch by George Eliot. But there's a story attached to it, and I think that sometimes... a refrigerator. I think sometimes in life things happen for a reason, I believe things happen a lot in life for a reason if you watch my Peterisms channel or my vlog. So, it's interesting in retrospect that what became my least favorite book had one of my most teachable moments assigned to it. So she knows who she is and I love her and I'm sure she's out there somewhere, hopefully helping other students. And finally, number 4, your least favorite book of life. Let's say that you're hanging out at the library when, bam, global warming explodes and the world outside becomes a frozen wasteland. You're trapped and your only chance for survival is to burn a book. What is the book you first run to? Your least favorite book of life. What do you not fully regret lighting? Well, I don't care what book it is. I'm not really big on book burning, but for the case of... the tag, I will say, This Is Where It Ends by that Mary Kay something. I don't even know how to pronounce her name. Okay, I was so excited about this book, you guys. I bought this book, and I think I bought it at Target. I always see it at Target these days. It has chalk on the front of it. It's like a blackboard and then it has like chalk on it. And it's a book about a school shooting, okay? I in the past have been extremely harsh on this book, so I'm going to pull it in a little bit today, but I have real issues with how this book was handled. Real issues with it. And I felt like the author went into it and said, I'm going to write and let me just tell you, this book has been, had major articles written about it and whatever, and I at one point even said that I thought, I don't know, I had huge issues with it, and how, the characters were handled. The book was about a school shooting. I think these are very, very serious and sensitive times. I will tell you this. For the book club last year, we read Columbine by David Cullen. Had I read that book at the time, okay, that I went into reading This Is Where It Ends, I would have been 100 times more critical of this book. I think the author went into it saying, I'm going to fictionalize a school shooting and try to have a teachable moment. I don't know who her teachable moment was to. I don't know if it was to a school shooter or if it was to the students that are running around or trying to take high risks and go in and be heroes, which is not recommended in situations like that whatsoever. I thought the book was, it fell short for me, and that's all I'll say. But I would burn that book quickly if I had a copy of it. I will say that I have decided, and I said this in a video in the past, to donate books, like to half price books or whatever. And that book I specifically, with a couple other books, donated to the library. So it is at the public library now. There were 3 books that I drove by one night at the public library. I may have even done it on a vlog, and I drove by and I put in a donation box because I just didn't even want them in my house anymore. So the library owns them now. But yeah, I had real issues with that book. And, it'd be real easy for me to get on here and say, well, I hated this book because, some other book because, oh, I didn't like the characters or it was boring or whatever. But I think sometimes you got to be really careful, especially when you're writing a book, a fictionalization, something like that. Like, really, truly asking yourself, like, I don't know. I would have felt differently, like, if the book was like The Dinner by like Herman. His last name is Koch. Herman, you know, I think it's Coach or Koch. It's K-O-C-H. But anyway, like, that addressed some very serious issues too. Like, but it was for adults. And, you know, when you're talking about a book that is aimed at young adult, like 9th grade, right? 10th grade, you have to be, I think, careful on what your motives are. And I just had I had huge issues with how the book was handled. I don't even think cringeworthy is an appropriate word. I mean, I'm reading the book, I'm like, what is like, I mean, I just was baffled by a lot of things that were in that book. So I don't know, that's just my personal opinions, but I feel like everybody in the world has probably done this tag, so I'm not gonna tag anybody, but if you wanna do it, put it in the comment section below that you're gonna do it. Tag your video, and you know, Peter likes books and I'll come and watch it. I love to watch tag videos, and don't forget to tag me in your videos. So anyway, thank you to Ariel Bissett for doing the original tag, and I will be back later in the week with some other videos. I love you guys, and I will see you then. Bye.